Our study of the human reproductive systems. As you know, humans reproduce sexually, so we're going to be looking at both the male and the female reproductive systems for the next few days. So put a parental advisory up here. It's really a younger brothers and sisters advisory. So if you're at home and you've got little kids around that might not be ready to learn about what you're learning, just maybe go to another room so that they don't get freaked out. But we will be talking about three parts. Today, the male reproductive system, and then on Friday we're going to be studying the female reproductive system, and then because they have a lot more going on, girls going to get 2 days, and then next week we'll be studying the menstrual cycle and the hormones. Sorry guys, you're not as complex as the females, so you only get 1 day. So when we start learning about male reproductive, I think it's important to talk about the gamete that men have, which is the sperm cell. It's known as a motile cell. It is able to move. It's mobile or motile. So there are two components to the sperm cell that are notable. The first is the head. This is the part of the gamete that contains the nucleus with the 23 chromosomes. Remember we learned about haploid and diploid. Sperm cells are haploid. They only have half the number of chromosomes. So for humans, that's 23. Also inside this head there are enzymes. The enzymes are like a navigation system that will help the sperm find its way out of the body into the females and to hopefully eventually to the egg. We're looking at one enlarged version of an image of a sperm cell here, but there's never just one. Where there's one, there's actually millions. So they all are going to be trying to find the one egg that they could fertilize to result in a new offspring. At the back of the sperm, you see the tail, also called the flagella, and that's what enables it to swim or give it its motility. So there's your sperm cell, the male reproductive gamete. The sperm cells need to have a fluid to swim in, and that is the semen. Semen is released during the time of sexual reproduction so that the sperm can swim and find their way to the egg. Remember, humans do internal fertilization, so a fluid needs to be provided for the sperm to swim. Organisms that do external fertilization, they're usually in the water and they don't really need that fluid. All right, sperm are made in the testes. The testes are the reproductive glands, also called the testicles, and they produce the sperm, but more importantly, or just as importantly, they also produce the male sex hormone, and from the word testes, we get the word testosterone. And testosterone is the primary male sex hormone. Females do have a small amount of testosterone as well. Males have much more, and it is responsible for the development of the male sex characteristics, such as greater muscle tone, facial and body hair, or deeper voice. So that's produced at the testes. Here's just a quick review of meiosis in males. We give it a fancy name because it's making sperm, so it's also called spermatogenesis. And remember, meiosis is when we take a body cell number of 46 and it gets divided twice through cell division to result in 4 cells which are haploid, 4 cells that only have half the chromosomes. So each sperm that a male makes when meiosis occurs or spermatogenesis occurs has 23 chromosomes instead of the 46, and each one, as you can see in this picture, is different from all the other ones. They get different types of chromosomes in each sperm cell. So that's why when offspring are created with males and females, they never look exactly the same as each other or as the parent. So it's the making of sperm within the testes, produces 4 functioning sperm cells, and this continues throughout a man's life. So we're going to find when we study the female that reproductive ability does end at a certain point, but that's not true of men. Men produce testosterone and sperm throughout their life. So we're going to be looking at the male reproductive structures in 2 views today. The first is the front view. This is a nice simple drawing. It doesn't label everything. The next picture we're going to see is a little bit more graphic, and that is the side view. So this picture here is showing you on the left and the right the 2 testes or testicles in the male. These are the organs, like we said, that produce the testosterone and the sperm cells. And above them, sitting on top of each testy, is something we're going to talk about and see in the next slide called the epididymis. And then from there, we have this long tube called the vas deferens, and the vas deferens exists on both sides, again, connecting each testicle to the urethra eventually. Above here, we see the bladder, which is really not a part of the reproductive system, but because males share the urethra, it's included in this picture. So the urethra functions two ways for males. It functions in urination. So when a man has to excrete urine, it goes through the urethra. And at other times, it's used for sexual reproduction when a male is releasing sperm. Now, the good thing is you can think of this kind of like as railroad tracks. If you've ever seen a rail train diverted from one track to another, there's a switch that turns off. So while a man is releasing urine, sperm cannot pass through the urethra, and vice versa. During sexual intercourse, urine does not pass through the urethra. It's only used for sperm and semen. So this is the vas deferens. These are the seminal vesicles, which we'll learn about on the next slide. And this behind here, this gray area, is the prostate. That's responsible for adding the liquid to the sperm. And then here is the urethra, and D obviously is pointing to the penis. And here's that graphic side view I was telling you about, but it's a lot more realistic. So all of these organs that I just mentioned on the previous page are labeled on this one. And you can keep coming back to this, as I will, when we explain each organ. So the first one that we see here is the testicle. And again, we're seeing just one side from the side view, so there's another one on the other side. And above this is the epididymis. So let's go to the notes that describe those. The testicle makes the sperm and the testosterone, and the epididymis is what stores the sperm. So obviously, while a male is making sperm all the time, 24/7 throughout their life, they're not releasing sperm 24/7 throughout their life, so it needs to be stored. And that's why when it comes time for a sexual event, millions of sperm are going to exit through the vas deferens and then get released eventually through the urethra. That's going to bring us to the vas deferens and the prostate gland. So the vas deferens, like I said, is that tube that carries the sperm from the testicles to the prostate gland. The seminal vesicle is where those sperm cells are going to get combined with the semen, and that semen is produced in the prostate gland. So you've got the vas deferens carrying the sperm, the prostate gland making the semen, and the seminal vesicle mixing the two together. So let's go back to the picture. So there's no fluid when the sperm are produced. They just climb up using through this mucus-lined membrane of the vas deferens, and they eventually are getting ready to leave the body. Now the word vas deferens, if you've ever heard of the male contraceptive procedure, the surgery called a vasectomy, the vas in vasectomy comes from cutting this tube. So if a man decides at a certain point in his life that he no longer wants to have children, they can cut the vas deferens. Sectomy means cut, so vasectomy, cut the vas. So they cut that so that the sperm that are produced in the testes are going to now be trapped. They tie it off after they cut it so that they cannot leave the body. Sorry guys if that made you flinch a little bit. But so the vas deferens is the tube, and again there's another one on the other side of the body that brings the sperm to here. The prostate gland is this purplish looking structure here that is producing the semen. Now the semen will then be mixed with the sperm here and returned into the urethra to be exited the body. Now what some of you may have heard of someone with prostate cancer. It's a very common cancer in older men, and it's what causes men to actually have to pee a lot when they get older. Because if this gland becomes swollen due to tumors, it presses up here on the urinary bladder. And you can see how much that would impact the urge to have to pee. So that's the prostate gland producing the semen, the seminal vesicle mixing the semen with the sperm, and then they leave the body through the urethra, which will be our next Okay, so the urethra is the tube that carries the semen and the sperm out of the body. It also will carry the urine. The urethra obviously is inside the penis. And that brings us to our last one, which is called the scrotum. And the scrotum goes back to where the testicles are. It's the skin that keeps the testicles suspended out of the body. So the male reproductive system is somewhat of an external system in that all of the structures are visible from the outside of the body. The scrotum is designed to keep the testes outside the body to keep it for a cooler air temperature. If the testes were inside the body, they would be a few degrees warmer, and it would really affect the production and the effectiveness of the sperm. So, as I said before, males produce testosterone throughout their lives, and they produce sperm and are able to become fathers throughout their lives. The testosterone that's produced really goes through a surge of production during adolescence, and over the years, as a man ages, there'll be less testosterone, but there will always be the ability to reproduce. So if you guys have any questions about this, I just want to show you that I did provide also in Schoology. You have a notes page that looks like this. You can download and print these, or you can just keep referring to them online, whichever is easier for you. But this will give you a nice little guide as you go to answer the questions for each unit. So today, was just about the male reproductive system. And then the next lesson will be about the female. And then we'll talk about menstruation and hormones for females. And then eventually we'll talk about how all of this leads to the production of a human baby, and then we'll talk about some twins. So you might want to print this to have a handy guide as you go through doing all of your assignments. Thank you guys. Have a great day.